Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. Gonna let you come on in. Welcome. Look at these. People are on time. I like this. Not that you have to show up exactly when I open it, but I appreciate that. Good afternoon. I was gonna say good morning, but good afternoon. Well, good morning here. Good morning where you are, I think. Good afternoon here. So good afternoon, good morning. Welcoming. I'm waiting for a few more people to come in. We're on episode 3 already. Man, that happened kind of fast, or it feels like it happened kind of fast. But yeah, I'm excited. And again, these people have already been on my journey with me, so I appreciate you continuing on the journey with me, sipping tea. Good afternoon. So it is afternoon there too, or is it morning there? Because I don't know about the time change. I think you guys are on a different time zone. I'm not quite sure. But again, thank you for those of you who are joining me this afternoon. Again, thank you for being on me with the journey. For those of you who are going to watch this later, I appreciate that. It is still morning there. I thought so. I appreciate that. This is something that, for those of you who are hearing, this is the first one you're tuning into, and hopefully you go back to the last two, which are also loaded on my YouTube, which is Sipping Tea with Stacey T as well. And obviously, if you're here, you're going to be able to see it here as well. This is something that I really kind of stepped out on faith to do and stepped out to do. I've been wanting to do it for years, literally, and finally I just did it. So I appreciate you being on the journey with me. This episode, going with the flow, is something that I feel like a lot of us have, I don't want to say a problem, but I think it's something that many of us have a challenge navigating. And I will obviously be speaking about myself and kind of my journey and trying to go with the flow, because I'm going to be entirely honest. I am not really a good go with the flow type of person in most circumstances. I kind of like to know what's going to happen, what I'm going to be expecting. Not sure how you all are with just kind of letting things happen. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I've tried to get there in certain areas, and we'll talk about that. But I think that, all of us are wired a little bit differently. I have some friends that are just like, whatever, just going to let things happen and kind of just deal with things as they come. And then I have friends that are really I already love that you're on the tea flavor, that are really adamant about kind of having a plan for everything. So since the tea flavor has been asked, I will answer that question. The tea flavor for today, again, my mother picked this one out. Not quite sure how this is going to go, but it is 100% pure white tea. No, I usually, I drink black tea, which is the most common tea, but we'll see. So again, this is Twinings, so we will see how that is. I'm opening it right now. We're going to steep it, and we shall see. All right. So getting my hot water in there. How have you all been? How was your week? Let me know how everything is. Challenging week for some of the people that are on here. We lost someone dear to us. So, all right, gonna steep that. I'm also curious if this white tea, to be honest with you, because I don't drink white tea. Hey, Janet. I don't drink white tea, so I'm not quite sure if this is gonna be steeping. Yeah, with honey, of course. I don't have the honey here. So you have to out me in front of, Miss Honey Police. But yes, I should probably try it with honey. At some point, I will try it again with honey. Right now, there's sugar that's going in. So I'll let that steep for a bit. I'm just curious to see, because right now, it's not getting any darker. So I'll just have to leave it in there for a few minutes. And yeah, personally great, politically horrid. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling the same way. I'm feeling personally, I'm feeling okay. Politically, it's very challenging, very challenging. And yeah, I have to say, one of the things, there are things in life that allow for us. A very busy, challenging week. Well, I hope, yeah, it's a lot of it is really challenging. Again, we did lose that person that's close to us. So, um, I think that there are times in life that you get to know people, and there are things that kind of propel you into discovering who people truly are, like at their core. Because there's a lot of surface. If we're going to be honest, right? A lot of us have really surface relationships with lots of people. And I feel like, with many things, there are kind of these catalysts, these moments in time that really propel us into finding, okay, this is who somebody is in their moral center, right? Who they are, not who they, not the, hi, how's the weather? How's the family? Not that kind of junk, but like the real internal stuff. And, I think that it's challenging. It's challenging often to find out who people truly are, because people are good at just giving you the surface level garbage, right? So for me, I think that in the last few years, it's been really telling, and I've been able to see it if you pay attention to how people present themselves and the things that they align with, and the things in the moments where they're silent. And that's going to be another one of my episodes. But in those moments when you see that, you're discovering who people truly are, and that's been a journey. We take lessons they have taught us and keep it moving. That is so true. There's an old saying, which I have no idea where it came from. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? But you take what you can. There's, in everything, lesson or blessing. And sometimes the blessing is in the lesson that they teach you, good or bad, right? Because you kind of learn, okay, this is not somebody I want to align myself with, but they may have taught you something positive, or they just may have taught you more about yourself. In your interactions, you've learned more about yourself. And so I think that in itself can be important. So yes, but I firmly agree with, sometimes you just need to keep it moving on that. The other thing that I will say that has been interesting is, learning, I think learning more about capacity, like how much you can take in situations where it feels like, everything is just kind of landing on you at the same time. There are moments where you're kind of like, man, I can't take anymore. And then something else hits, and then you're like, okay, I didn't think I could take anymore. I don't necessarily want to take anymore, but I do have capacity. And so I think I've learned that in this season, or this time as well. So it is just kind of, if you're curious about the tea, it is getting a tiny bit darker. So I'll kind of give you, I don't know if you can see that clearly, but it's been in there for a while. It hasn't gotten a ton darker, but it's darker than I thought it was going to be. So, because at first I was like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to tell that this is good, bad, or indifferent. All right, so let's get into episode 3. And for those of you who are new, I will ask questions, and just feel free, just like how you did, feel free to enter your responses in the chat. Going with the flow, as I said, is not something that I'm necessarily great at. And it's funny because people that kind of met me through because people meet me through a variety of avenues, much like all of you. People might meet you from work or church, or things you volunteer in, or what have you, or your family, right? But I think people thought that I was more of a go with the flow type of person. And in all due fairness, I think that I thought I was a little bit more like that, and potentially it may have changed or adapted the older that I get. I kind of like to know who's going to be there, what's going to happen, how long are we going to stay, like all those types of things that are important to me. And some people, I remember when I was younger thinking, man, these people are crotchety, and I guess I'm becoming one of those crotchety people. But, let's go back to where we kind of learned this idea of going with the flow. And I think it's something, obviously, like much else we learn in childhood. Going with the flow, often came from my thoughts of going with the flow as a younger person was, don't rock the boat. Like, just let things be, calm and peaceful. And people that knew me as a child will probably not say that I fell into any of those areas. But one of the things that, looking at my childhood as an adult, one of those things that I think about is, why was that? Why was it that going with the flow for me was even challenging then, right? I think that there are some people that, in their nature, right? In their nature, just are, wanting things calm always. And for me, you know how like a lot of kids are those why kids, but why? But why? But I don't understand. Explain to me. I think even though I necessarily didn't say why, I was always that person. I want to know why things were they were the way that they were. And oftentimes those things don't, those don't mesh, right? You're not necessarily, if you're a go with the flow person, you're not really asking the why often. And that's not to say you never do, but you're just like, okay, this is the way things are, and that's the way things are supposed to be. And I think that that's not something that was innately who I am. So from, a younger child, that wasn't, something that aligned with me. One of the things that I think is interesting is as I got older, you hear lots of people say things. And one thing that stuck with me, and I think I heard it maybe a couple of years ago, so it's not even that far removed from this conversation, is somebody said, when somebody wants to be a peacemaker, they're typically being a peacemaker for the other person, right? It's not that it's something for them. And so that person, some people that this doesn't apply to, so nothing I say is a blanket statement, right? But oftentimes, people will, say that they want to be peacemakers, but there's an internal war going on within them, right? So in order to maintain peace, they have to sacrifice their feelings. They have to sacrifice, their maybe their joy sometimes, their calm, their sanity even, And so I feel like people probably wouldn't believe it, but I did that, I think, a lot more often than I didn't. But the times when I didn't, it was very evident that I was like, I can't maintain the peace. I can't do it. So I'm curious, for you as kids, thinking back to your younger selves, do you feel like you were already going with the flow of how your family dynamic worked? Or did you feel like you were always like out of the flow, out of the sync of the family, potentially flowing in a different direction, right? It was funny. There was so I'm just going to wait for you guys to respond to that. But there was a movie I watched. I can't remember the name of the movie, but they were talking about, oceans and how people are in oceans. And this person said, rivers flow, oceans do not. So do you feel like you were going upstream while everybody was flowing in the opposite direction in your family? Or do you feel like you were going in the same direction? You guys were paddling and you guys would have been A-okay together. And I see somebody's trying to join. Not sure if they're going to be able to, because I'm not sure how this works in the middle of both. Oh, explain that. I'm really curious. Always with the flow, but kept a lot to myself. That's interesting. Is that something, that's it. That's very interesting. And I think also generationally, kind of what our generation was growing up dictates a lot of that. What was that like, discovering that? Or do you feel like you still do that? Or is it something you're paddling with the flow? You were paddling though. Okay. Good for you. That's good. That is good. As you know, because you grew up with me, I did not always paddle with the flow. At work. So let's talk about, you're still like that? I think, well, first of all, you don't have to keep a lot to yourself. I'm still here. But I think that is a very, and it's also funny because all of us right now are with the new family. Yeah. I get it. I definitely get it. I think that what's interesting is we do that, and I'm wondering often, when we're going with the flow, are we doing that because we feel like people won't understand what we really feel or how we really think? Because for those of us who did that to a degree, or I kind of like Tiffany, I did both. I did both, even though some people probably wouldn't think I did both. There was a lot that I kept to myself as a kid. A lot that I kept to myself. And so I feel like, when you do that, and then maybe you potentially still bring that into adulthood, how does that manifest? How does that, show up in the relationships, at work, in personal relationships? How does that manifest? How does that show up for you? I had to go with the flow, but I kept to myself and marched to my own drum. I love that. I love that. It's almost like a secret society that you had within yourself. But again, and it's so interesting, and I'm wondering how many people feel that way. If I were to, like, take an assessment or take a survey, I'm wondering how many people feel like they didn't have a choice. Like, you go with the flow because that's what it is. I'm wondering if that's generational. I wonder if I was to take, because all of us are older than 30. I'll just say that, right? So I'm wondering if if the younger generation would feel that same way. I'm really curious as to, and maybe I have to take an assessment or do a quick survey or poll on my page, because I'm really I think that that generationally that might have shifted a little bit. For me, I had to do it with my family traditions, i.e. it's just the way that it was in the 60s. Yeah, it was that way in the 70s and 80s too. It was the same thing. I think that, a lot of us grew up with, what happens in this house stays in this house. And so you just kind of had to toe the line. I feel like internally that was always a struggle for me, because I wanted to understand why people were being treated the way that they were, why things happened the way that they were. I always had that, I call it investigative mind. I'm sure that to my mom, it probably didn't feel that way. I should ask her at some point. But, I feel like sometimes they automatically assume that that kid is, a disruptive child or a bad kid or whatever, right? But I think that I was always wired to try to understand the depth of something as opposed to look at things at surface level. Now, mind you, if you've ever met me, you know that I can have a surface level conversation. If I don't want for people to really see a depth to me, then they won't. That's just how I've always been wired. Because not everybody needs to get that, in my opinion, not everybody needs to get that close. But yeah, so that's how that goes. There were not choices like there are today. That is for sure. Sometimes when I hear the things and the way that the young, and I feel, wow, I'm feeling old right now just saying these young kids. But when I hear the ways that they talk to their family, I am shocked. Absolutely shocked. I wanted to be a part of the crowd, but was told you are different. Dare to be different. Yeah, and I think there's an ebb and a flow to that. I think for some things, being different is, first of all, being different is not a bad thing. That's the first thing. I think that, however, sometimes people don't get who the person that you are, and that's why they automatically peg you as different, right? I don't think that growing up where I grew up to, I think that there's a dimension to that. I grew up with people, none of the people that really look like me. And so I think there's a dimension to just automatically being different because I was a black person living in an area where there was all white people typically. So there's a component to that automatically made me feel out of, not out of alignment, but I knew there was difference, right? And I was told every day when I went to school or existed in that area that I was different. All right. So I think the tea's got to the point that it's going to get to. So let's give it a taste. Again, this is Twinings 100%. You can see it's open. I did. This is what I used. I didn't put in my favorite one. Let's try it. To me, there's the thing that it's missing is that like bold flavor of tea. Like, yes, with no honey. It has no honey in it. Right now, it doesn't even have anything in it. It's, I want to taste it without like it doesn't even have, for me, black tea has a stronger, bolder flavor, and I'm missing that component of it. So, all right, let's put some stuff in here and hope that, and yes, Tiffany, I will have honey next. It's missing honey. Yeah, it's missing something because there is zero taste. It literally doesn't have it just tastes like if you've ever just had warm water. That's kind of what it tastes like to me anyways. Yeah, no. This one is not something that I would, I mean, if this was the only tea that was there and I wanted tea, then I would drink it. But I think I would have to put a pound of sugar, honey, something in here for it to be something that I would continue to drink. So that is my honest assessment of this one. I love a lot of the I love a lot of the Twinings. Actually, it's one of my favorite brands, along with Bigelow. But that just is not. I need the black tea taste, I think, is what I'm missing. All right. So coming back, that was my honest assessment. You can try it yourselves. Let me know if you want to try it. Let me know. Also, if you have specific tea that you want me to try, let me know. Send it to me. I will try it. For those of you who don't know, like I said, I love the chai type teas. I love those, but I'll try. As long as it's not herbal tea. Unfortunately, I can't drink herbal tea. It does give me headaches, so can't do that. But other teas, I'm good. Alrighty. So we talked a little bit about childhood and, kind of why we might have been wired to go with the flow or not go with the flow. And some of us kind of paddled both ways in both directions. Some of us went with the flow because that was the expectation growing up. There wasn't really much of a conversation about being different or daring to be different. Ginger peach tea. Oh, I love ginger peach tea. If you want me to try that, I will try it. That's not a hard ask at all because I love that. Is that your favorite? Is that why you mentioned it? But I do love ginger peach tea. So let's talk about at work. For one of you, I had the opportunity, or for a couple of you, cinnamon tea. I don't think I may have tried it before. It's not ringing a bell, but I'm sure that at some point I probably had it. I was most often, I was drinking lemon ginger tea, and that was my go-to. I was just drinking it. Somebody actually gave it to me as part of one of my gifts, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic. So that was my latest one, is the lemon ginger. So at work, let's talk about going with the flow at work. This is a really interesting one because work dynamics, I feel, can be really challenging. You have a lot of different personalities in one space trying to hold court, if you will. So all trying to get work done, trying to get a job done. And I guess I should even skip back to before I go into work. Let's talk about going with the flow when we had to work on school projects. How many of you loved working on school projects with a group? So not just your own project that you can manage your time, but working in group projects. How many of you enjoyed that? Because I can tell you, as you drop your answers in for that, I can tell you I detested school projects. Not because I don't like working with people, but in that, I think that was the first kind of wake-up call that that was a big no with exclamation points. Nope. I think that was the first time that I realized that people literally would, just the differences in how people worked, right? Some people would wait to the last second. Some people would be in the group projects, kind of just kicking back. And again, people knew that I was a nerd and I wanted to get an A, and so they were kind of like, "Oh, Stacey will do it. I'm great." Like, people would love when they would volunteer, or they would volunteer to be in a group with me because they were bona fide or guaranteed an A, because I was gonna work my butt off to make sure that we got an A, right? That was just going to be what I did. You let them do it. I love it. I love it. It all depends. You got burned many times. Yeah, I know. I remember. I think that, working in groups is your first awakening outside of your home, kind of that dynamic, was to be in those things. And even when I went to college, the same experience. It's interesting when you have to start working in teams and have different people who literally their flows like crash into each other, right? Literally are bouncing off of each other, causing like tsunami like waves. You have people who are just going to be in the group and just sit there and do nothing. You have the people that are going to become the instant note taker, and that's what they're going to do to contribute. All those, like, being the note taker is important. But the person who's just sitting there kicking back and doing nothing, what is your purpose? So, the reality of it is, I remember specifically a time when I was in college, and I had somebody who was not doing anything. Like, they literally were not doing anything. And I think my sister has a similar experience of, you have to kind of let those people go up and do the project, right? Go ahead, you can present. And I know you have nothing to present because you didn't do jack, right? You didn't do anything to do this thing, to get this project done. So go up there and look like a clown in front of the group, because you're not just going to leech off of me and not let it be declared. Because I remember in college, they kind of like, oh, figure it out. They don't want to get involved, right, in the semantics of kind of helping you navigate that. But the whole point is, you're now in an environment where you're all getting judged by your ability to work together. So paddling together, going with the flow, being able to take in the fact that not everybody sees things the way that you do. So taking their different flow and saying, okay, how do we incorporate this? Can we incorporate this? But how are we able to still kind of exist together, right? I think that for me, kind of when I think about high school, going into college, or just that transition period of being in school, that's where you first learn about the differences in flow, and even just how you observe, relationships with, other students that you're in school with and their families. The things that even back then, some of the things that they were able to do, I was like, my mother and father would never, like absolutely never. And it was sometimes simple things like sleepovers. They can come to our house, but you ain't going over there, right? Those types of things. Just are different dynamics about how people live their lives. Is that okay? Yes. But again, it's a different flow. And how do you manage that? How do you maintain that? So that was an interesting discovery, I guess, if you could say that. You had to advocate for yourself. Yeah, that's for sure. You asked to do a project by yourself to get a grade. Good for you. Good for you. I definitely I'm laughing because when you say you advocate for yourself, let me tell you, Stacey was going to advocate for herself and for, others. The reality of it is when you are in an environment where but even that, I will say, is showed that you kind of had your own flow. The fact that you were even able to do that for yourself, or that you thought to say, I have to stand up for myself, for oftentimes, especially in childhood and youth, that's not something you're taught. Right? That's something that had to have been inside of you. Because a lot of people just take it. Just suck it up. It is what it is. You have to be in the group. You're going to get the grade that you're going to get as a group. And you were like, that's not going to go down this way. Like, I need to work by myself. I have a different work ethic than they do. This is not going to end up, well for me or whatever. So even that just kind of shows automatically, or already at that young age, you were able to say, I have to flow a little bit differently than these other people. I'm not just going to go with this and then end up with a horrible grade, or be in a situation that's so uncomfortable for me that it's horrible. It's horrible. And a lot of young people don't have that ability. Being on the school committee, I worked with a lot of young people, and a lot of them had zero idea of what they could do, because people are just saying, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. So when I would go and say, oh, you can ask for XYZ, they had no idea that that was allowed for them, or that that was something that they could actually do. So I think that, it's awesome to hear that you had that even as a younger version of yourself. I think the other thing that is interesting is when you start getting into the world of work. And the world of work is interesting because who you are gets kind of brought to the surface, or brought to task. And by that, I mean, there are sometimes, depending on where you work, and not every workplace is like this, but depending on where you work, there are some people that you're going to be working with or working for that want you to do some shady business, right? Hey, just sign your name to this. Or, hey, don't, just look the other way when such and such happens. Or, hey, bring this person's resume to the top of the stack. Or, throw this person's resume in the trash. All of those shady things, right, that are not what you're meant to be doing, those are brought to you, right? And for people, especially when you're first starting out, I remember first starting out, I started off my kind of my work career as a recruiter. I was actually working for the recruitment firm after I graduated, and then became, um, I became a recruiter actually. And there was just some, when I would see things and how they would even, the fees they would charge some companies as opposed to what they would do with other companies. They were like, "Oh, Stacey, just sign this." And even then I was like, "Nah." Like, I, again, also, had a father that was like, really, I think, I don't want to say street smart, but lack of a term, street smart. So I think that rubbed off on me, and I was like, "Nah, I'm not signing that." I have a bad feeling about whatever you want me to do that you're just kind of trying to rush to me on Friday at 3 o'clock. Nah, I can't do it. And so they were like, "No, it's fine." And I was like, "Okay, then you can go ahead and do it. I'm just not gonna do that." But cooking the books, that's another one, right? Not cooking the books. So I think that, you have to think about that. How are you with, as you said before, advocating for yourself? Are you comfortable with that? Or are you just like, "Oh, well, it's my boss. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to make this a big thing. I'm just going to go with the flow." Let me tell you, going with the flow has gotten some people arrested, right? And doing jail time. So I was like, no, if you're doing shady stuff or stuff that makes me feel uncomfortable or is against who I am as a person, like my moral fiber, I just can't do it. I can't help you out with that. So I think that oftentimes people are not aware of, in every situation that you're going to be in, that go with the flow is going to be tested. And are you still just going to go with the flow? Or are you going to say, "Yeah, no, this is a time that I have to go against the tide. I'm going to have to definitely go against the flow of the water because this is just doesn't make me comfortable. And I just don't think it's wise." For me, going with the flow is, who am I at this stage of my life, right? Who am I? And what are the things that I morally align with, right? So it's not just like surface level stuff, like I said to you at the beginning. It's literally who is Stacey, and is she willing to go in this direction, or is she not, right? So let's go into friendships. I think this is another place where going with the flow can be looked at. People will say that people that call into question friendships are just like extra, this person's extra, or this or that and the other thing. And the funny thing is, look, lives. I'm not naive to think that life doesn't life. And all of you that are on here, I know. And, I talk to randomly. One of you I talk to every day because, my sister. So, but the reality of it is there's not always constant conversation, but I care for everybody that's on this right now. So, but the reality of it is, time and situation and circumstance, lives. So, for lack of a better term, life. So, I'm giving that as the caveat before I say what I'm about to say. There are times where people in friendships just don't want to make time for you, right? And this is also should also be said. There are different type of relationships that are not friendships, but they're friendly. Okay, so I can have a friendly, acquaintance. I can have a friendly person that I work with, or go to church with, or just know from childhood. That doesn't mean they're my friend, right? So I think that I want to kind of spell that out as well. But the thing is, in life we have a variety of choice. My mom chose my friends. Really? That's interesting. I would love to hear more about that. And you don't have to post it in here if you don't want to, but I would love to hear more about what that means. Does that mean that, literally it was like, okay, these are the few people you can hang out with? Or does it mean, you're not hanging out with this one because I don't like this one, but you can choose all the other ones? So I'm curious what that means. And, that's not a singular thing. I've heard multiple people say things like that. Especially I know some people that, were in arranged marriages, and that was very much their life. Like, their parent picked who they hung out with, and then obviously who they ended up dating or being engaged to, and then who they married. So it's not, abnormal, but I'm very curious to hear more about that. But, I had, back in the day, a few people who felt like they needed to regulate kind of how I existed in spaces, right? The bossy ones who were like, oh, you need to do this and wear that and go here. And, we'd walk into the space and they would kind of gallop into the space and kind of beckon me over. And I was like, okay, like, this is just too much, too extra for even me. For those of you who think I'm extra, that was extra for even me. But I think that one of the things that often happens is because we want to be accepted, because we don't want to live life alone, because life is not meant to live alone, it's meant to live with companionship. So because of that, oftentimes we make all these exceptions, all of these choices that really otherwise we may not make, because we're trying to navigate, okay, I get it, people are different, maybe I'm just being too much, maybe I'm being over the top, maybe it's not a big deal what they do, but in the grand scheme of things, your friends are supposed to be people who align. They don't have to be mirror copies or mirror images of you, because that's really boring. But at the heart of who they are, you should have no kind of fracture as far as your morals, right? Your general overall morals. And again, there may be some things that they lend to that you don't, but who you are as a person, foundationally, I don't know how you maintain friendships with people that, if you, for example, are, a minister and then somebody who, hates everything about church and constantly talks negative about, your faith, or, says you're stupid for believing in God, those types of things like that. They may not be a person that is in church all the time, but if they're constantly mocking you for belief in God, then how does that, like, that doesn't align, right? And so I think that those are things that you have to be thinking about. All right. Dating. Dating is also an interesting thing. Dating, marrying, all of the things, right? Man, oh man, when you're dating, you are trying to bring together two people who generally are very different, right? Very different. Their upbringing may have been different. What they, how they express themselves may be different. You may be loud, they may be quiet. You may be, very political. They're, don't want to get involved in politics. I mean, it could be like literally apples. I call it apples and zebras, right? Difference between the two of you. However, now you've decided that your hearts are connected, right? Whatever that means. So in dating, you're trying to navigate this. And then you go from dating into potentially being courted or married. I know, old school courted, right? And then getting married, and then so on and so forth. So this is the thing I will say, is that can be very challenging if you're not strong in who you are. If you are not a strong person in who you are, anybody who gives you any semblance of attention could draw you into the depths of disaster, right? And I know that sounds super dramatic, but I mean that. Because there are times where you literally get so consumed by being in a relationship that who you are, you don't remember, what flow do I have? What do I do? Who am I, right? It's easy. It's so easy, because when you start bringing emotions into any measure of relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, whatever, as soon as you do that, your flow is now trying to understand this other person's flow. And if they are really strong in who they are and how they present, all of a sudden you're on a boat that just got capsized, right? And now you're going with their flow. Like, that's entirely it. And so what I will say about this is, make sure, and before you get into any relationship, and I don't care if it's a friendship or working relationship, you really need to know, and I talked about this in one of my other ones, is who are you? Like, bringing your whole self. Are you yourself? Do you look at the nature of all your relationships, friendships from school time, dating, marriage, whatever. who are you? And there is a general progression. I'm not going to say you should be the same person in each one, because that would be silly. There should be some measure of change and growth and all those things. Yes, you have to know who you are. And I will say that I have been in several relationships where I adapted the other person's flow. And let me tell you, it's miserable. It is miserable until you realize, you know what? I'm going to let them do their flow. I'm going to let me do my flow. If these flows can flow together, cool. If not, then maybe God was trying to flow this person on out. Right? And so for me, I think it's super important to be honest with yourself. It's super important to stand up for yourself. You know, the other thing that I will say is that, you know, going with the flow is especially when you're connecting friends or in a relationship, going with the flow and looking at how somebody else does things, it's an intentional decision to go with the flow, right? It's an intentional thing. But what I will say is, especially in relationships, whose flow are you going with? Right? I often hear people say, you know, especially, man, when I was dating, especially when I was on these dating sites, which are abysmal. Let me just tell you, and I've been on several of them. Several. So if you want to know, I can tell you all the good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. But, you know, on these sites, a lot of, you know, you'd meet these guys and they would seemingly seem okay, you know, they seem sane enough. They seem attractive enough, right? They seem cool enough. They have enough of, you know, what I'm looking for on paper. So you start to get to know them, and, you know, one of the things they first start saying off is, you know, I think you're a great woman, blah, 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 all the things, right? I think we should just go with the flow. And if I had a red flag right now, I'd wave it, right? Because whose flow? Whose flow exactly are we going with? Oh, your flow? What does that mean? And again, this goes back to Stacey as a kid. What does that mean? I need you to explain that. Because go with the flow doesn't mean we're just going to sit here forever and paddle, because my arms are going to get tired. Let me just tell you. And I'm not just going to sit in the boat and you're paddling and I'm like dazed off and have no idea what's going on, right? We need to be both holding a paddle, an oar, and be going in the same daggone direction. If not, are we on a white river raft and that thing is just all over crazy, you know? No, I got to get out. Like, I got to get out. So I think that it's important that sometimes you're willing to say, okay, even though, you know, the person's cool, this is a good friend, this ride, I need to get off. I'm getting nauseous. I can't get on the merry-go-round or the roller coaster or whatever it is. I tag me out. I think that that's important, and I don't think that people are willing to do that. People have asked me, and it's funny because I was having this conversation with somebody a few days ago, actually this week, and they were saying to me, you know, are people that don't consider you selfish, you know, when they want to just go with their flow, they want things to go their way. And so when I say go with the flow, sometimes it's like they just want things to go their way. They want to be the one who always picks where you eat. And it could be simple things, but let me tell you, those simple things can be aggravating after a while, right? If you talk to people about marriages, people that are married, about things that annoy them, it's sometimes either doing the same thing all the time or letting the other person always control what they do, where they go, what they watch on TV, you know, how they dress, all the things that seem tiny but get on your daggone nerves after a while, right? So I think that it's important when we're thinking about going with the flow, we're not just thinking grand scheme of things. How do you and this person align at the fundamental level? Yes. But also, what are the things that this person does to consider that you are in the boat with them, right? That you're also swimming together. Is the person there, or have they gone way out? They already got out the pool and they're ready to go off the diving board, and they see you, you know, still in the section, and you don't even have your, you know, your floaties. Like, what flow are you going with? I think that's really important. All right, I'm just trying to make sure, because I want to take some notes today, because I want to make sure that there were specific things that I spoke to, because they're really important to me, especially with this topic, because it's an important topic to me. The other thing is that I will say is when you have spent time with people And I mean specific people that you have spent a good chunk of time and you've made the decision to spend time with. Going with the flow is a trust building exercise, right? And not one of those whack ones that they do at work. Right? Like, let's have a trust fall, and then the person lets you fall to the ground and, you know, hurt your back. Not that kind of thing, but it's a trust because the person, I think for me, trust is important in the fact that it implies that you're considering me, right? You're considering how I feel. You're considering what you do, how it impacts me. You're putting my needs into consideration in the choices that you make, right? So it's not like, oh, I'm just making choices and, you know, Stacey can come along for the ride or not. I'm making sure that, you know, hey, do you want to do XYZ today? Like, wow, thank you for asking me. And it's not that I would say that, but it's to me that shows that you're going with the same flow, but intentionally. Like, you've made the choice to do that. You're not just going with somebody else's flow. Because let me tell you that you can drown that way. You can drown that way by going with somebody else's flow. If you don't know how to swim and they're swimming upstream and you're just a beginning swimmer, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. So before I end, I want to talk about going with the flow and how I've been trying to look at it now. So going with the flow now for me has been something that God has been working with me on, because there's so many times where there are things that happen in your life that you cannot control, right? My mom had a horrible, you know, situation medically last year. I couldn't control that, right? I didn't matter what I wanted to do. My sister controlled it. I couldn't control it. It happened to her. She couldn't control it. It happened to her. And so that was a situation where I was like, okay, God, this is above my pay grade. I'm unemployed right now. Not a situation that I can control. Wasn't that I didn't do my job. As a matter of fact, I was going crazy doing amazing work and starting new projects. So it wasn't that my work was questioned, but regardless of that, unemployed, right? So there are times in your life where situations happen that are entirely out of your control. No way for you to navigate it other than to say, for me anyways, for me to say, okay, God, this is above my pay grade. I say that all the time. I can't control this. I can't, navigate this without you. So for me, it's me saying, I'm going to go with your flow, right? What you're going to do in my life, for my life, with my life, I'm going to go with your flow. And so for me, that has been, I would say, even before disconnecting from my former employer, that was like kind of my thought process for the last few years. As a matter of fact, I would tell people I don't pray for myself. I would pray for other people. And then I found out that was wrong. So I still I pray for myself again. But I wasn't doing it not to say that I thought I was all set. It was, God, I know that I'm going to go with your flow for my life, your purpose, your plan for what you want me to do. So even in doing this, I was like, I felt like God was telling me, okay, do this. This is the purpose. This is the plan. This is what you want me to do. So it wasn't something that I was like, oh yeah, let me get on here and this is what I'm going to do. And it wasn't that. It was literally me saying, okay, I'm going to be obedient because I feel like this is what, and so many people were supportive of me doing this at this time in this season. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be doing that. Just like I'm supposed to be writing a book, and I'm saying it now so that I'm being held accountable, right? So I already started it, but with the disconnection, I've been kind of going through a mental, like, okay, what's happening? How are things going to be? How are things going to be? And I won't lie, I went through definitely some down days, right? There are still going to be tough days. In the midst of you giving and going with God's flow, there's still going to be days that you feel depressed, sad, disconnected, all the things, right? And it's okay. That's okay. As long as you don't let yourself stay there, right? And you still say, okay, God, I'm not feeling the greatest today. So that's important for me too. But for me, going with his flow for my life is really important. And so I've made personal decisions to be like, okay, yes, this may be something I don't understand. This may be something that's challenging, hard. This may be something I hate. And I'm honest. When I talk to him, I'm honest. Like, just like I'm talking to you, how I talk to him. But I'm still going to trust your flow. So in going with the flow, that flow, because it's without fail. He knows the entirety. I only know like this much of what's going to happen in my life. That flow I'll go with. Other flows, I want him to dictate, this is the direction that you do. And that's in relationships of, romantic sort, friendships, family relationships, all the things. Work, all of it. So that is episode 3. I don't know why I did it different on both hands. But that is episode 3, going with the flow. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I appreciate you all being here for this. Again, if you haven't signed up for my YouTube channel, which is Sipping Tea with Stacey T, I believe that I'm going to change over my TikTok to that as well. And other than that, and then again, please invite anybody that you think would enjoy this content. And I appreciate you for being here. Thank you. I appreciate that. Invite anybody you think would enjoy this. I have been kind of keeping it. At first I thought I was going to open it up to the public, and I still may go that direction. But for right now, I'm keeping it more so with people who have decided that they want to be on the Sipping Tea Instagram. So for right now, it's kind of a hidden gem. And when God tells me to open it up, I will do so. Because that was me wanting to open it up. He didn't tell me to do that. So in any event, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. All right. With that, have a fantastic day. And as I always say, be kind to, oh, and look at that. Sean decides to join as I'm ending. So as I always say, everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and extend to yourself and to me a measure of grace. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye, everyone. No need to be sorry. Better late than never. I appreciate you. Bye.